So I'll be fast. Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to be with you at this, the fourth Indian Ocean Conference. I guess this is the former Cold War super panel power. But thank you, India Foundation and RSIS. Congratulations to President Sola for his victory in last year's elections and to the Maldivian commitment to the democratic process. The U.S. looks forward to working closely with Mali on our shared interests in a free and open Indo-Pacific. The Indian and Pacific Oceans are where the future of the Earth will be determined. Even today, the trade routes through these seas form the central arteries of the global economy, with over 60% of all maritime trade passing through these waters. Strategically, virtually all of the world's key maritime choke points face the Indo-Pacific, from the Panama Canal to the Strait of Malacca to the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb and the Strait of Hormuz. Changes in our climate threaten the region, as all of you here in Maldives know all too well. This region is already one of the greatest engines of global economic growth, and 4 of the world's 6 largest economies are found here: China, Japan, India, and of course the United States. The ASEAN community is the fastest growing economic zone in the world, and the concentration of population and economic activity in this region will present special challenges in regard to the demand for food, for energy, for housing, and most importantly, for freedoms. It's no exaggeration to say that the future of the globe depends on the choices made today in the Indo-Pacific. And folks, if you're wondering why the U.S. Ambassador to the Republic of Korea is speaking with you all today, well, me too. I suppose it could be that this is an area of the world I've visited and thought about across a 40-year military career. In my previous job as the U.S. Indo-PACOM commander, I spoke at the first 3 Raisina dialogues in India and the Gal dialogue in Sri Lanka in 2017. So I'm familiar somewhat with the challenges that you face here in the Indian Ocean. So I'm going to speak to you today through the twin lenses of my past life as the U.S. Indo-PACOM commander and my current life as the U.S. ambassador to South Korea. So ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake about it. The United States is an Indo-Pacific nation, always has been and always will be. To Raja Mohan's point, there is no retrenchment, sir. We are part of the region geographically. Much of our citizenry, me included, are from the region. Our soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen are buried across the region, and our future is inextricably linked to the region. American engagement as investor, producer, consumer, stabilizer has contributed to the economic momentum that we see in the region today. Our robust relationships in the Indo-Pacific include 3 free trade agreements and 14 trade and investment framework agreements. The U.S. alone conducted over $1.8 trillion, and that's trillion with a T, in two-way trade with the Indo-Pacific in 2017. The Trump administration remains focused on building strong, reciprocal, and balanced bilateral trade and investment relationships throughout the region. The value of U.S. foreign direct investment in the region has more than doubled in the last decade and today stands at nearly $1 trillion. In fact, no country has invested more in this region than the United States. Importantly, unlike some other countries that I won't name, when we invest, we create jobs, not debt, both in the region and in the United States. Today, U.S. investment supports over 5.1 million jobs in the Indo-Pacific region. What we bring forward is a vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific. President Trump announced this vision in Vietnam in 2017. Secretary Pompeo built on it on the Indo-Pacific Business Forum last summer. Vice President Pence further expanded the details in his speech at the APEC in Papua New Guinea last fall. We believe that the Indo-Pacific nations should be independent, strong, and satellites to none, underpinned by the 3 pillars of economic, security, and governance, This is how we intend to work with our friends, allies, and partners. And we followed our words with actions. Initiatives like the U.S. BUILD Act, the Asia Reassurance Initiative Act, and the Transaction Advisor Fund demonstrate in concrete terms our real commitment to this region and our determination to fight for our principles. These efforts will unlock billions of dollars from the private sector for investments in the region and will bolster Indo-Pacific countries' abilities to implement sustainable, transparent, and high-quality infrastructure projects. As the U.S. Ambassador in Seoul, I'm blessed to witness firsthand an ever-vibrant and growing partnership that boasts a long record of success. In 1953, the Republic of Korea made choices. They chose democracy, an alliance with the United States, and close partnership with other free and open countries. The North made a different choice. The outcomes speak for themselves. Together, the U.S. and the Republic of Korea have worked to produce one of the greatest economic success stories the world has known. This alliance continues to serve as the foundation for peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula and as the cornerstone for security and stability throughout the region. Of course, North Korea continues to pose a persistent challenge with its UN-proscribed weapons programs, but we're in a far more optimistic place today than we were just over a year and a half ago when I wore a different uniform. We witnessed 3 meetings now between President Moon Jae-in and Chairman Kim Jong-un, and 3 meetings between President Trump and Chairman Kim. Developments that were unimaginable just a short time ago. The strength of the U.S.-ROK alliance and our unity and advancing mutual hopes for peace, prosperity, and stability on the Korean Peninsula and more broadly in the Indo-Pacific is evident. But Korea obviously isn't the only success story in the region. Just look at our relationship with Japan. Once a bitter enemy, today Japan is one of our greatest partners. Together, we overcame the divisions of the past to forge an exceptionally close partnership as we work hand in hand to bring peace and prosperity to many parts of the globe. For a more recent example, consider Vietnam. We fought a fierce, long war against the Vietnamese, but since normalization of relations in 1995, our relationship has completely changed. Today, Vietnam is a close partner. Finally, consider our relationship with India. The U.S.-India relationship has finally lived up to the promise President Eisenhower saw in his 1959 visit, when he said that, quote, between the oldest democracy on the earth and the largest lie 10,000 miles of land and ocean. But in our fundamental ideas and convictions about democracy, we are very close neighbors, unquote. In 2004, the U.S.-India relationship transformed into a strategic partnership under the leadership of former President Bush and Prime Minister Vajpayee. I share U.S. Ambassador to India Ken Juster's evaluation that the current U.S.-India relationship is as broad, complex, and rich in substance as any bilateral relationship in the world. We went from rarely talking to each other to not only talking together, but building action together. Skepticism, suspicion, and doubt on both sides have been replaced by cooperation, dialogue, and trust. Our Indo-Pacific vision is about developing such deep and respectful relationships based on security, respect for the rule of law, and mutually beneficial economic development. I submit to you that these ideas resonate throughout the region, though sadly are not extant everywhere in the region. But we can aspire, and we together can accomplish much. I see a convergence between our closest partners around this idea of a free and open Indo-Pacific. These values are reflected in President Moon's new Southern policy for expanding engagement with South and Southeast Asia. Under his pillars of peace, prosperity, and people, this initiative demonstrates a shared vision for the region that highlights a natural harmony with our own Indo-Pacific vision. And Prime Minister Modi, at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore last year, put forth a similar vision when he described India's Act East policy. And he said, and I quote, "When the oceans are open, the seas are secure, countries are connected, and the rule of law prevails, and the region is stable, nations, small and large, prosper as sovereign countries," unquote. This is precisely the rationale for the U.S. Indo-Pacific vision, which Prime Minister Modi acknowledged as an important pillar of the U.S.-India global relationship. The same principles are found in Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. Japan believes that a free and open maritime order in the Indo-Pacific region includes the promotion and establishment of the rule of law, freedom of navigation, free trade, economic prosperity, and commitment to peace and stability. These principles are international public goods, which will bring stability and prosperity to the region as a whole. Australia's a stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific strategy focuses on dispute resolution in accordance with international law, open markets, economic integration, freedom of navigation and overflight, protection of small states, and cooperation with like-minded nations to achieve these goals. And we welcome ASEAN's outlook on the Indo-Pacific, which was adopted by ASEAN leaders last June, and ASEAN Chair Thailand underscored its focus on inclusive, equitable, and collective growth. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now briefly speak about China. China is a great power, an economic powerhouse, and a cultural center of gravity. The United States partners well with China on a number of important fronts, including counter-piracy here in the Indian Ocean, and the ongoing efforts to achieve the final fully verified denuclearization of North Korea. But the United States and China fundamentally disagree on how to approach the current international order. The Chinese government doesn't keep its word, from its treaty with the British on Hong Kong to its WTO commitments and to human rights. This is why we've made very clear through our Indo-Pacific vision that the United States rejects foreign policy based on leverage and dominance and seeks instead to strengthen relationships based on respect, equal footing, and fair exchange. You can see that divergence of values and how China is treating Muslim Uyghurs, its own citizens, in Western China. In fact, the Chinese Communist Party has exhibited extreme hostility to all religions and religious faiths since its founding. China's diplomacy seeks to force ASEAN members to define codes of conduct in the region as dictated by Beijing and conforming to Chinese standards. You can see intimidation in China's militarization of the South China Sea in defiance of international law. As Secretary Pompeo said, quote, "China's bullying in the South China Sea reflects a broader choice for nations in the region, coercion and control, or freedom and the rule of law," unquote. China's continuing interference with and escalatory behaviors toward Vietnam's longstanding oil and gas activities in Vietnam's EEZ is deeply concerning. This calls into serious question China's commitment, including in the ASEAN-China Declaration on the Code of Parties in the South China Sea to the peaceful resolution of maritime disputes. You can see it in the predatory economic policies behind China's One Belt, One Road initiative, which ignores international norms on transparency and entices countries into a debt trap that leaves them vulnerable to coercion and threatens their sovereignty. Now, let me stress that despite our concerns about its actions, we do not seek to contain China. We enjoy a productive bilateral economic relationship with China, as do many, if not most, countries in the world. This is right and good. We welcome China's participation in a rules-based international order, and we remind Beijing frequently of the prosperity that that order has created for China, liberating hundreds of millions of people and lifting billions of people out of poverty. As my good friend and ambassador to the Maldives and Sri Lanka, Elena Teplis, says, the world is safer and more secure when strong, sovereign, and capable nations partner together. The United States is working to expand economic opportunity around the world because we know that transparency and inclusive economic growth improves lives. We believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, unquote. I wish I was as good with words as Ambassador Teplitz is. Together, moving forward. These words permeate almost everything the United States seeks to do in the region. Or as my Indian friends would say, South South Age Charlene. Together, moving forward. I think you're laughing because I mispronounced that terribly and I admit that. No, together,
Very good job.
Together, moving forward. Standing up for values that ensure our joint security and prosperity, linking Americans and Asians generation to generation. So ladies and gentlemen, I've talked too long, so let me close with this thought. We seek relationships throughout the Indo-Pacific region, relationships underpinned by the rule of law, sovereignty, a commitment to fair and reciprocal trade, open commerce, and the freedom of navigation. Only in this way can we together uphold the principles that allow all of us to enjoy security and prosperity and enable us to face challenges of the future with confidence. Thank you very much.